All right, we are live on YouTube and Twitter. Again, GM everyone, and we can get started whenever you're ready, Raymond.
Yeah, so let me start share my screen. Crystal, turn my camera back on and share my screen. Okay, everyone see my screen?
It is coming through for me.
All right.
Just in case, it's showing the Discord, like your Discord screen right now. I'm not sure if
Oh,
that's
only
right.
the only the Discord screen?
Right now, yes, for me.
Okay,
Everyone else, please, mhm,
Let me
please let
switch
us know.
that to make sure. Okay, I should switch to the whole screen. Better?
Yes, perfect. Yes.
All right. So, first of all, welcome back to the public CTO office hour. I think we renamed that to be a dev deep dive to accommodate both the CTO office hour and the dev relationship office hour into one. Uh, but today, we're going to talk about how we can leverage ChatGPT, OpenAI to help our target audience, especially in the context of uh, providing support and the documentation to our developers and the customers. So AI is really exciting, especially with the emergence of OpenAI, ChatGPT. People see the potential, and for us, it's such a productivity gain if we can surface all the knowledge to our target audience, right? So in a traditional route, you basically just go to the documentation site and read things by yourself. But sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. You have to, traverse through the website, finding the different, tabs to figure out what the right question to ask. So we decided to give a try to say what's a meaningful way to surface this knowledge to our target audience. So the first thing we do is we enable our documentation website with a special Ask AI, icon to the bottom right corner. So basically, instead of browsing through the documentation site, you can start to ask questions here as well. So let's give that a try. Like, okay, let's say how to install Collab and Cisco Go. Right. So give that a try. So this is a pretty straightforward, right? Because it tells us, hey, here's a simple step, and then you can click on this link to invite all above, and it also tells you what's a source from what website. So this is pretty cool, and you can continue to ask questions here, like say, what is the how to develop a mini app using collab actions. So it's pretty nice. First of all, it actually stream the response so that you can see that being generated in real time. And secondly, they give you the access to different choices. Like say, okay, if you want to create a action in Express, in Loopback, or in Python, here's the different choices you have, and then give you some details about how you can construct a Cloudland action and then make them as a mini app to the Cloudland marketplace, and it also give you some information about how to test the mini app and give you some pointers to the documentation. So this is very cool. So this is actually based on a third-party service we integrate to our website and get this AI assistance on the website directly. But today I'm not going to talk too much on the website because we are serving the Discord communities, right? And we want to create this test bed so that we can meaningfully surface a similar capability to our Discord bar, so that we can have this AI assisted self-serving to answer questions for the users, for the community enemies, as well as the developers directly from Discord. So that's why we create a specialized slash command on Discord. So I'm going to switch to my Discord server and switch to a test server I have. And it just for disclosure, the slash command I'm showing today is still on our QA system, so it's not in production yet. So we'll take some efforts to polish it and decide what's a good timing to make that available to all the production servers. So we introduced a /ACE API, ACE command, and the ACE coming from the role, like community members for Cloudland, like the mascot, and we give them a fancy name called ACE. So let's see what ACE can do here as a slash command, right? So I'm going to ask the question, like, say, how to install Cloudland Discord bar? The downside of AI is a little bit slow, so we have to be a little bit patient here. Yeah, so it gives similar answers here, like, okay, install Discord bar, following steps, find into your Discord account, click here to invite the bar. So for example, if I click here, it will go to this Discord authorization flow, right? So I'm not going to do that. And they give you additional instruction about to make sure you set up the right permissions. So this is very similar to what you see from the website search, right? So if you have further questions, then you can actually click on this more questions button, and we'll prompt dialogue here and say, let's say how to build a mini app using Cloud Actions with Express. Let's see how the answer is being generated here. And one thing to notice here is, like, on Discord, we sort of have to wait for the whole response to be generated so we can display on the Discord channel. It could be a bit tricky, like we try to update the response in a streaming mode. So we'll try to figure out if that's possible, but for now, let's just assume you have to wait a little bit, but it's still better than you go to the website and try to search everything up, right? But now you're getting a pretty good description how to create a Cloudland mini app using Express the template. So it gives you some instructions, and what's cool is actually it format the structure quite well because it have the markdown format, so it kind of give you this nice, easy to read instructions. So this is a pretty nice, thing we can do with our living Discord, right? So this gives you a little bit of preview of this slash ace command, which serves as a virtual assistant on Discord. At this point, you might wonder why it has the ability to answer questions that's specific to Collabland. Because typically, if you go to chat.openai.com, you can only answer the generic questions that either the large language model learns that from the website or from the crawling, everything. Imagine a lot of knowledge we have here, it's specific to Collabland. So in a way, it's a private knowledge base, right? And how do we enable ChatGPT to recognize this meaningful information that's specific to a particular domain? So for this talk, I'm going to surface some technical details, how we enable that. So let's kind of stay at a high level. And if we go back to this documentation side we have, right? So the documentation side contains a lot of textual information about certain questions and answers from the developer's perspective, from the community admin and the user perspective, from the DAO member perspective, right? We don't directly get all the information from the website because we don't scrape in the website. But in a way, we kind of go back to the social tools we have that published to this website. And if you go to our GitHub repo, then I can show you where the social tools is being stored, right? So we have this Collabland dev repository. Try to look it up. So this is actually a public repository. So the purpose is we want to have community contributions that help us to improve the documentation. So this site is being backed by a third-party tool called Docsaurus. And Docsaurus allows us to organize the different documentations using Markdown files and give us that website layout and look and feel, right? And if you look at here, we have different kind of docs. For example, this is the help documentation we have. And if you look into like FAQ, then we have something like, oh, here's a security FAQ. And this is a rendering of the Markdown file into the website kind of format. But if you click on the role site, this is exactly we put into the repository as the Markdown file. So the idea is now we have all this information from this GitHub repo, right? And they're mostly in the Markdown format, which is still fairly easy for human beings to understand the knowledge inside this text file, right? And how do we bring this knowledge to the IE space? That's where we utilize a framework called NameChain. So I'm going to switch to the code level a little bit and say, so the first step is you somehow need to normalize the knowledge for your domain, right? And in your case, the social tools is the GitHub repo. And inside the GitHub repo, there are different files, and most of the files are the Markdown files. So that's why we have built an internal tool called import docs. So the purpose is to extract all these Markdown files into a bunch of text, right? Then we have to store the text into a database. And I will mention that why we need to store that into a database, right? So looking at this code, we import a class called GitHub repository loader. So this loader class is responsible to use your GitHub access token and really just traverse through all the different directories on the GitHub repo and then look at all the different files on the different directories and extract the information from the GitHub repository. Okay. So we first construct a GitHub repository loader and giving that the repository URL and giving some options that, hey, which branch you want to look at it, and is that going to be recursive? Then, of course, we want to give that a security token so that it can talk to the GitHub API, right? Then once you construct this repository loader, you can call the load method. So that will become an array of documents, right? So then looking at the main methods, they will say, okay, first though, we need to construct a token text splitter, because when you load a huge amount of text data from the GitHub repo, right, it kind of can go beyond the limit of the OpenAI, and you want to slice them so that you can create a meaningful storage into your database for this knowledge. So that's why we use this special class called token text splitter, and use the GPT-2 encoding. Then we have two different arguments. One is the chunk size. It's like the size of the chunk. It's like how many characters per chunk. Then between the different chunks, you want to give a little bit overlapping so that it can mix correlations between these different chunks, right? But these two numbers are kind of magic numbers, depending on the information you are retrieving and what's the relationship between the different piece of the document. You might have to fine tune like what's the reasonable chunk size and what's the reasonable chunk overlap of the. Then we call this method to load these files. Then we split the documents based upon this splitter configuration, right? Then toward the end, now we have this documentation being sliced into a meaningful chunks. Now the storage come into play, because usually, say, if you have a JSON document or you have some structured data, then you use a SQL database, you use a NoSQL database. But when it comes to AI, there's a special format called vector. So vector is a mathematical term, meaning you have a bunch of floating numbers represent the information. And this is the format make it easy for the AI model to understand the meanings. Because typically when you have a SQL database or a non-SQL database, you basically just store the information in a structure, right? So it's more on the syntax side. It's not on the semantic side, but the vector store is actually good at understanding the relationship between the semantics, the meaning. And in the real world, sometimes use different terms to describe similar things, right? So for example, you could have different names for something similar, like say you have a documentation, you have like, I don't know, some other terms to describe the documentation, but OpenAI, the large language model, can make that relation. And the vector store is capable of storing information that's friendly for that retrieval, right? So that's why we say, okay, let's get a vector store and let's store all these, sliced documents into that vector store. So for us, because we already use OpenSearch as our metric store, and what's nice about these different stores that now they are starting to open up the like a vector store capability, right? So that's why in our code we actually create a OpenSearch vector store, and in the OpenSearch vector store, we store that into a specialized index called name chain OpenAI index. I can probably also quickly go to the OpenSearch and kind of show you that as well. We go to index management, and if you try to search all the indexes, and search by name chain. Yeah, this is the what I do. It just move away. Yeah, this is the one. So if you look at here, this is a special index we create to store the vector data, and the total size is 28 megabytes, and altogether we have about 550 documents there. And there's some index settings. So if you look at the settings, there's something relevant to the vectors records, right? Because first of all, we have this KNN flag to tell this index is special. It's really for the vector store. Then there's some other settings that points to the vector store as well. So now we have the OpenSearch as the vector store, and this utility will kind of reading information like this import docs.ts will reading information from the GitHub repo and push all this information as a vector index into OpenSearch, right? So that's the first step we do, right? Then going back to the Discord side, because we have this /ace command, right? So let's try to look at how we implement that /ace command. So let me search up. So we have this ace handler. So the ace handler exposes one / command called ace. And this /ace command basically have a one optional argument, which is a prompt. So that will be translated to here. Like if you do /ace, right? So you have a one optional argument. So you can put the question here directly, or if you don't put the question here, you get a dialogue for you to input the question here, right? So that's how we handle these two different flavors here. Then when it comes to the real logic, if you look at here, we have a couple of things. One is we need to handle the application command. So this is a / command coming in, right? And they say, okay, let's look at the command name. If that's ace, then we try to get the prompt directly from the command. And if the command already supplied the prompt, then we basically invoke the ChatGPT directly. Otherwise, we'll build that dialogue and set the model to the front end. Then we have something to handle the model itself, which is say, okay, now you submit that form. Okay, we getting this form, and we try to read the prompt from the form. Then once we have the prompt, we invoke the ChatGPT function as well. So let's go into the invoke ChatGPT. Now we just say, okay, we got the information. Let's just push that question to OpenAI. So we first try to figure out which user is making that call, and we use the user ID as the session ID, so we can keep the conversation isolate between the different users. Then we ask the claim name, knowledge base, right? Say, okay, we have a special question coming. Can you answer that question? Then we kind of say, okay, let's delegate that to this Q&A bot, right? And the Q&A bot, what it does is we use the session ID, which is the user ID, to get a particular name chain. And from the name chain, then we say, okay, let's call that name chain. But this chain is a little bit special because we set up the chain in such a way. First of all, you use the or OpenSearch as a vector store, right? And secondly, we also have the memory for the conversation, and we use Redis to keep track of the conversation for some shorter period of time. So you have some context if you continue to ask different questions. So this is where we use the name chain conversational retrieval Q&A chain, and that will be use this large language model, which is an OpenAI chat model. That we use the OpenSearch as a vector store, as a retriever, and we get up to 5 similar matches there. And what's interesting is we customize the prompt for the OpenAI. So this is where all the magic happens, right? So now you just instruct OpenAI what question you want to ask and what context you want to handle. So the idea is that you provide a generic prompt to OpenAI, say, hey, as a support expert, use the following piece of context and the general knowledge to answer the question at the end. Be specific and provide enough details if possible. If the given context does not have enough information, so I think I need to change this. Does not have enough information, then give the generic answer instead. Meaning, we first try the collaborative knowledge base, and if the collaborative knowledge base does not give enough context, then just use the generic chat to get. For example, if you ask a question about MBA, of course we don't have that context. Then OpenAI should fall back to the generic approach. Then we have a couple sections here. The most important one is this context section. So the context section, we have a variable called context, and this context will be coming from the OpenSearch vector store retrieval. So the name chain will use a question as an input and ask the OpenSearch, say, hey, what are the similar requirements documentation you have from OpenSearch, and then use that to fit into this context section and together with the original question. Then also define the output section, which is a helpful for answer, right? Then we also set up the memory to keep track of some back and forth conversations. Then we pass this whole prompt to OpenAI to get all the information there. So this is how the magic happen here, and we hook up some of the memory and also the vector store with our own infrastructure, right? So that's how it works in our context. So that's for the yeah. So kind of going back to here. So let's try to ask some generic questions. Like, what is MBA? Let's see how you respond.
Raymond, I was wondering if we can ask Ace how to disconnect my wallet, because that
sure.
question comes up a lot in the chats. So I'm wondering what the response would be.
Okay, so the fallback actually works like if the collaborative knowledge base does not have information about certain questions such as the MBA, right? So it basically go back to the original question. So I can also ask the question, how to disconnect my wallet.
And while it's thinking, there's also some additional questions in the chat whenever there's a moment to answer to those.
Sure. Okay, so it says to disconnect your wallet, following the steps. First of all, log into Discord server and then click on the Let's Go button. Then you find the connected wallet, then click the disconnect from the wallet there. So that's how you kind of like follow the Let's Go flow and then launch the UI, and you see the connected wallet. Then you can just disconnect from there. And kind of going back to the questions we have on the stage. Let's see, it does not ways to train or correct the AI. So, so one idea is like, imagine, let me go back to the UI again and ask the question that we don't get good answers. Let's say, so while it's thinking, so for example, like this is not very satisfactory, right? It just say, okay, the information provided does not explicitly mention the Discord bot ID for CloudLine. However, there's some generic information. So one idea is like we will continue to ask questions, and we will add a new button here, so that we can flag this answer is not meaningful. Then we could have that information say, okay, the user asked this question, but answer provided by the ACE is not very helpful. Then we can keep track of that improvement and say, oh, why it's not helpful? Probably because we didn't explicitly mention the Discord bot ID from this website we have, right? So we have this, you know, docs.cloudline website. And you can ask the question here, let's say, what is the Discord ID for CloudLine bot? So this gives the correct answer, and it seems like they have additional, access to other social tools. For example, we have these safety tips from the Freshdesk article. So most likely, this Freshdesk article is not importing to our documentation site. I might be wrong. So let me look up the documentation site as well. Like say I'm a user, right? Then we have a FAQ, and we have security and the privacy. But here we don't have that information. Like looks like we only have one entry in the FAQ. But if you look at here, we have this additional information. So we expect to say we have this, official CloudLine user ID for the bot, but I think that information is lost when some of the articles get migrated from the Freshdesk to the website. So this is a good, feedback, because I could imagine like if we add a button here, say, okay, this answer is not meaningful, then we can keep track of these issues and improve the user experience to make sure the knowledge base have that knowledge. So that's one of the questions, and kind of going back to the other questions, maybe somebody else can help me to identify the questions. I lost track of some of the questions here.
I think I can help. There's one more question. Erden is asking, what's the license for this software to load GitHub code into OpenAI?
What's a license? Let me find that question somewhere. Oh, okay. So we use a supporting library called NameChain, and we are use the JavaScript flavor of that framework. They do have two different, language support. One is for JavaScript, and if you look at here, the license, I think it's a pretty liberal. It's probably an MIT or Apache license. Let's say, do you have any license information here? Yeah, it's an MIT license. So this is one of the most popular frameworks people use to really work with large language models. And there are two different versions. One is if you are a Python developer, then you have the NameChain. This one is in Python. Then I'm a JavaScript developer, so that's why I'm using NameChain.js. Okay, let's go back to the question again. Are there any other questions? Oh, so I think one question is about checking the potential harmful links from the message, right? So we are also doing some experiment there as well. So one of the ideas, let me show you something. So I'm kind of surfacing some like a POCs we are building as well. So let's imagine we have some message here, and we want to see if this message have any. I think for the private message, you don't have a way to tell them, but let me check if there's anything. Okay, let's say we have this bad link here, right? So we are experimenting something which can verify the message and hook up with some mini apps that's capable of detecting the malicious links. Uh, I mess up my because I have a Hello World action install. Um, I can uninstall that one first. Okay, going back to here. So the idea is like, say, when you see a message, right, and you see this suspicious link in that message, the user experience we are kind of considering is like you can have a right click on that message, then you go to the apps, you will see some action from CloudLine, and the CloudLine can delegate that message. In this case, since we don't have any mini apps to handle that message, but we just bounce back the message to be verified. And like, in that case, you see this content here, right? So then this content could be fit into the AI program to say, oh, okay, is there anything wrong with this response? We can classify the response and to give the different mode. Like this is offensive, this is security, this is like, not so, it's violating the terms and services. So we try to open this door so that media apps can contribute to the behavior to help us to verify the user as well as the message. So the pop-up command is being under development and evaluated, and we could potentially surface that through the AI engine as well. And then I also check the user itself, like say, okay, let's verify this user. And then again, we don't have any media apps to verify this user yet, but we have the ability to verify this user in the future as well. So that gives you a little bit of preview about our thinking process, and hook them up with some AI capabilities that will be even more meaningful. Going back to the stage again, are there any other further questions? All right, I believe I answered most of the questions showing up on the chat. Chibi, did I miss anything?
I think those are all of the questions as of the moment. But if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to raise your hand or write them in the chat. Oh, we also have a POAP for today's session, so we can distribute it whenever.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly done with my talk, and if there's any further questions, then of course, we can answer all the questions. Otherwise, I think it's a good time for you to distribute the plot.
Sounds good. All right. So for everyone in the audience, if you would like to claim your POAP for today's session, we'll be using the POAP mini app. So that's /command POAP claim. And the secret phrase for today's POAP is AI support. All lowercase and with no spaces in between. You can write the /command in any of the chats of the server. Again, that's slash POAP claim. And then the secret phrase is AI support, all lowercase and with no spaces in between. After you write it down, hit send and you'll receive a code to claim your POAP. Please let me know if it works. I see someone asking for the secret phrase again. So let's repeat it one more time. Just in case, the claim command is slash POAP claim. And then the secret phrase is AI support, all lowercase with no spaces in between. AI support. Also, welcome, Robin Hood. I was reading that you're new to these sessions, or maybe the server too. So, welcome. Super happy to have you here.
All right, I'll stop streaming. Yeah, once again, thank you so much for joining the session today, and hopefully, we can continue to improve the AI journey and surface more meaningful tools to the tokenized community we serve. And we want to use this as a test bed for Climate itself, but in the future, there's a possibility we can release features that allow a community to use their own knowledge base to provide this meaningful Q&A in the context of the community itself.
Right. I think that we are good to wrap things up. Just in case, I'll repeat the secret phrase one more time. So again, to claim the POAP, you can write in this chat or in the general chat. It will work in any of the chats of the server. You use slash POAP claim, and then the secret phrase is AI support. All right. Well, thank you so much, Raymond. I think this was a fantastic session, as usual.
Yeah, thank you, Chibi.
Oh, and I see someone in the chat. Just to clarify, the secret phrase is all in lowercase and with no spaces in between. So that's AI support, all lowercase and with no spaces. Good. I think that we are ready to finish the session. Thank you so much, everyone in the audience, for attending, and also anyone watching on Twitter and YouTube. Really appreciate you joining us. And thank you, Raymond, so much. Looking forward to the next one. Thank you. See you guys next time.